Hello, everybody. Welcome. People are coming in. As you are coming in, welcome to Hatch Collection. Welcome to Boober. Welcome to Building Your Birth Plan. So excited tonight. You see here we have the amazing Ilana Glazer here. So excited to have you. We're going to talk about it more, but let me let people kind of flow in. As you guys are coming into the chat, we always love here at Hatch. I teach here a lot. We talk all about all the pregnancy, the birth, the postpartum, lactation, all the things. But we want to see who's out there with us. It helps make this a little bit more fun. So if you could drop in the chat, are you pregnant? Are you postpartum? How many weeks or months or years? It's like postpartum is forever, right?
Fully,
All
dude,
that.
fully. Just for my husband's birthday, we went out with his is this good to
Yeah.
kibitz right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Went out with his best friend and they have a 9 month old. And his wife was like, thank God you told me postpartum physically is 2 years because I feel crazy in my body. I feel so awkward. And I keep holding tight to that. I have a 3 year old and I'm like, I think I'm out of it. But the separation, that is literally your whole life. I'm like still separating from my mom. I'm 37.
Me too. And 10
You're
years.
37?
47.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, still separating from my mom.
I mean, it's true. It's we're like so removed from where we come from in so many different ways. And it's like, it's forever.
It is forever.
Hayden,
Oh my
July
God, look who we've
17th,
got here. So we have all these
pregnant
people.
at 34 weeks,
Okay. I'm like, okay, so
31
we got
weeks
Jersey
with first
City.
baby.
Who is the farthest along here? We've got some 31 weeks. We've got a 3-week-old. Hey, Audrey. Um,
Ooh,
let me,
34 weeks is
I
real
love
far.
this. We've got
Newly pregnant in NY. Ah,
people. Okay, so I'm in NY. Uh,
me too.
we're out in
3 weeks old.
Brooklyn. Aw. We've
That's
got some
crazy.
Got a few
That's
people.
crazy.
Yeah, tell me where you guys are. We usually have everybody drop in how pregnant you are and where you are. So now you have to keep dropping in the chat. Tell us where you live because part of what we do here at Hatch is we create community. And I'm so grateful to Hatch Collection for hosting all of these classes. They're an amazing lifestyle maternity brand, but it's always been really important to them to educate and create community. So I used to teach in the
Mm,
store before the pandemic, then we went into this virtual mode, and it's been so amazing
cool.
to connect with all of you guys. Um, so I see a lot of people from Cali. I'm from LA, but living in New York for a long time.
Jada, do you know what FTM means? Melissa says 38 and a half weeks, which is wild. What's FTM?
First time mom. I know. I used to think
Ah,
it was something else, but
this
yes.
is so exciting.
I,
Oh my God.
oh, hey,
Sixth
Taylor. We've got
baby,
a doula. I
fifth
see some doulas.
boy.
I know. Oh my God. Amazing. And then we've got a few people who are 10 weeks pregnant. So, and
DC,
10 weeks pregnant
Philly,
and 10
Brooklyn.
weeks left. I love it.
Nice. Portland, Oregon. Yes. Oh, this
Yeah.
is so cute.
I love it. So good to see all of you. So let me just do a little formal intro, and then we're not going to be very
Oh,
formal. But I just wanted to say again, thank you to Ilana Glazer for coming out tonight, and thank you for everybody who came out. And thanks to Hatch for hosting this amazing event. I teach building your birth plan once a month, but I was so lucky to be invited to the screening of Babes a few weeks ago in the city. And, I'm a longtime birth worker. I've been a doula for over 20 years here in New York.
wow.
Yeah, birth is like pretty crazy here. And I always a little like, okay, how's birth going to be portrayed in this movie? Uh,
Mm-mm-mm.
and I even consult film sometimes to try and help people get birth and babies, and lactation and like what it looks like. And I was just so blown away. Like, not only you guys, it's so funny and poignant and real about being pregnant, birthing, because like you showed birth on all fours. I just want to say that. I, I'm I've been waiting for somebody to do that in a movie. So thank you.
It's
So
my pleasure. It
isn't
cracks me up that I had this idea that it was for my birth, giving birth, I had an idea that that was the best way to deliver. And the thing that's been most the paradigm shift for me, the biggest paradigm shift for me becoming a mom, and even just when I was pregnant, was that how for so long, and this is how I've operated, this is how I've become a comedian and had my career for so long. I thought having an idea and then visualizing it and then building toward it was how something was done. And I like chose to have a child because I wanted that experience of not being, you don't plan it, your body does it while you do everything else. I created a human without a thought, you know? And like, I had this idea that giving birth on all fours was like superior and that being on your back was the patriarchy. And like in the middle of my birth, my doctor was like, I know you want to like do doggy style. She didn't say that, but she was like, trust me, you know. And I delivered on my vaginally on my back and like pressing my feet into my husband and my doula. You too?
Me too. I did. I mean, I
And
just want to say that, like, I also, of course, had the idea because I teach about it. I'm like,
you did.
squatting, squatting, open up the pelvis, laying on your side, being on all fours, very instinctive. But my baby decided not to come in any of those positions. And
Wow. Wow.
even, and I had to get on my back actually. And sometimes, because I'm a never say never person, I'm like, look, you got to just go with it. The baby's not coming out. And my midwife just kind of got me on my back. And I was holding my leg in this weird way, like you pressing in,
Yeah.
and she just came under the pubic bone finally. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, that's
Were you at a
amazing.
birthing center?
I actually planned a home birth, but I transferred to a hospital because she
Wow.
was not coming. And so I was in a hospital with my midwife and then another midwife and an OB. So I had kind of all of the things.
That's so cool.
Uh,
Wow.
well, you, if you want to share.
Me, I was in a hospital.
Mhm.
I just I don't know. And then also I was like, am I again, I'm like, am I Western? Is this capitalism? But it was just like that's where I want to do it and where I am most comfortable in my mind. But then it's just like so animal and so primal that well at least in my what it felt like for me, that it's like it's not about like the curtains and the tiles. You know what I mean? It's just like a space where you're giving birth,
Yes.
or having a C-section or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
However you're giving birth. I mean, I think, and for everybody listening here tonight, I think that's incredibly important. And I am never going to try to convince anybody to give birth any particular place. Like that is not what I'm interested in doing. I want you to feel like you have choices, you have options, you know that there's hospital birth, that there's home birth, that there's birth center birth in some places, not in New York right now, and that there's choices for you. Then there's different kind of care providers, and that's a big part. Everybody, as we're talking about kind of building your birth plan, like part of that is thinking about, like where are you most comfortable and who are the humans you want to surround yourself with,
Right,
like
right.
right, midwife, your doctor, your if you who your support people are. So I'm definitely, I want to be clear, like whatever I did or what you did, right? We're just two people here
Yeah,
did
yeah,
our thing, but we also want
right.
to have this conversation to help people, decide if they haven't decided. I bet a lot of you who are pretty pregnant already know where you're giving birth. So, so we'll talk a little bit about choices and options tonight. But we got chatting. And so now let me just give that little formal intro in case you don't know enough about Ilana, because I'm going to drop her info and you should, but she's an Emmy award-winning co-creator, writer, director, executive producer, and star of the critically acclaimed show Broad City, which I just loved, as I was telling you right before we got on. It's really, I can't believe my daughter has started watching it, who's 16. I'm like, should you be watching this yet? But we laugh so hard. So thank you for that.
My pleasure and honor, truly.
And most recently, you co-wrote and starred in Babes, which is what is bringing us here tonight, a new film from Neon, directed by the amazing Pamela Adlon, co-written by Joshua Binowitz, and co-starring the amazing Michelle Buteau. Um, Babes
Incredible.
tells this amazing story of your character Eden, who becomes pregnant from a one-night stand and leans in on your best friend who has two kiddos, and some of the language from the thing talking about the complexities of female friendship with a blend of laughter, tears, and labor pains. So you guys, if you haven't gone to see Babes yet, really, it is the most, it's funny and it's really a fresh take. I want to talk about actually one of my favorite parts, which is the birth plan. the how did you come up with this concept? Your take on the birth plan is too funny. Like there's so many good things to make fun of my world, um, birth world, which I appreciate also. But I loved your take on the birth plan. Should we tell them?
I think so. I'm kind of like, you know, just like I'm saying with like birth and motherhood, you can have ideas and think you know something, and then you get there and it's like so different. So I think even if we tell you all on this chat, it's not going to ruin it when or if you see it. So again, so this like paradigm of like having an idea about anything about the pregnancy and birth experience or even parenting when you get there, it's like so different in actuality. My character Eden has she's single and she's doing this solo, and I think that's like part of why she uh, creates such celebration to be able to like visualize um, and pull her best friend in because she doesn't have a partner and is, I think, nervous about this huge life-changing event that's about to occur for her, with which is giving birth. And so she has a birth plan that's prom themed. And oh God, it's so silly. And
It's just
and then like the way it sneaks up on the audience, you don't expect it. And then when you like sort of see it visualized, it's like, oh God, this is quite silly. It's quite silly and
it just
a pretty good one. A pretty, if you're gonna have a theme, it's almost like her bat mitzvah theme, but for birth. Like birth plans aren't themed. That was kind of the vibe.
I just love it. And you guys are like, you're like, I'm wearing my prom dress and you go in your limo. But I love that because, we talk about like creating your birth atmosphere, right? Which is
Mm,
important actually, like in all, not silliness. And everybody here, as you're thinking about, where you're giving birth. So drop in the chat, where are you giving birth, you guys? Are you at the hospital? Are you at a birth center? Are you at home? Depending on where you're giving birth, and most of us are probably here giving birth in a hospital. That's the most common place to give birth. So the hospital room is still your room, and you can do some things. You may not give a crap about it, by the way. If you show up really late, you won't care, right? Like you said, like you will not care. You'll give birth on flatfoot. It doesn't matter. You don't care. When it's time, you don't care. But like you could have a very long labor experience as well. And one thing we do know, for instance, is that bright lights actually inhibit and slow down labor, which is really interesting. People observing us, people flipping on the lights really bright, people talking really loud, people getting up in our business. And when we
ugh,
think about like how to create a birth atmosphere, we want to create an atmosphere that allows our hormones to flow, right? In labor, which literally like not from, oxytocin, which is my favorite hormone to talk about.
of
That's
course. Oh my God, yes. So good.
right.
Yum.
So good. It's the hormone of love, interconnectedness, well-being. It's the hormone we produce when you're having an orgasm. It's at pretty high levels, but when you are giving birth
Wow.
at the most peak levels of your life, and part of that is that it actually helps make contractions happen. It helps our uterus contract back down after we have the baby so we don't
Mm,
too
mm.
much. It helps when the baby latches on, if I'm feeding the baby from my body, baby latches on and I release more oxytocin, which then moves my milk. So this hormone that helps us like produce feelings of well-being and bonding and interconnectedness is really critical. But when we get really observed or we release too much adrenaline is a natural blocker of oxytocin. And so we do want to think about how do I make my
Mm.
room as, as kind of comfortable and cozy and connected as possible in a way, if that's important to you. So, I don't know if you did any.
Adrenaline blocks oxytocin.
Yeah.
There's some Freudian shit going down for me with that, where I'm like, that is like adrenaline is like the ego.
Mm,
And I don't know, feels like male spirited to me. And oxytocin is just like that all consumptive
mm,
divine feminine. That's wild. That makes sense. I feel like I had the lights turned off for when I um was in my active labor, which would make sense because those lights are just terrible. Being observed is really resonating with me too. Oh God, does that take you out of it?
yeah. Right. Like, so a lot of people, we like to talk about this concept of like when you imagine a romantic night or a sexy night or anything like that, even if you're not thinking about that for childbirth, but like you just are pooping. I don't know any of it. Biological functions, norms, which birth is. We don't tend to want to have a bunch of people with a spotlight on us. It's kind of intimate and it's like out of our head. And so, for my people here, as you're thinking about what to bring in your birth bag and building, your birth plan, it is thinking about like creating that ambiance, which means like literally like turning off the lights. It's a very simple thing. And bringing, I have some props here. You can bring like fake candles and you can just
Mm-mm.
take them around the room. I don't know. Did you do music at all?
I had like a whole, because I have like a groovy friend who was like, you just want the vibe to be right, man. And I was like, totally, I do, because I'm cool. And like, I had ideas about incense. Or like, there's no fire at a hospital, if that makes sense.
Right.
Um, and I think I had ideas about stereo and this and that, but like when the time came for me, I I was not thinking. I was an animal being, which was so freeing. And like again, I'm fortunate enough to have been in a situation where this was choiceful as we look at the 2 years since Dobbs. I'm like, oh God, is it hard? Like forced pregnancy and forced birth is so psychotic. We're all like warriors stepping on a ship never to return when we choose to do this. It's not even like it's some fun thing. It's really hard. And this growth is so crazy. And, it's like real and amplified, you know, amplifies everything in life.
Yes.
Um, so something I loved about this experience, about my birth experience, about my pregnancy was like how little I judged myself compared to how much I do normally, how much I did prior, how much that's crept in afterwards. I was just talking to my therapist, I think last week or the week before, I said something where I was like judging myself about something. And I was like, it's not like I judged myself when I was giving birth. Can you imagine? And he like laughed. And I was like, right? Isn't that so crazy? Like, why would I judge myself giving birth to any other process? It's I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for the example that resonates with me for the rest of my life. Are you hearing my husband and my daughter? Is this disruptive to you?
I just when you said that heard a little bit of a. I don't even
Okay,
notice
great.
babies. I'm like they're supposed to be in the back. Like what? Oh, is that?
Okay, great, great.
I
Wait,
mean,
Jada, did you
everybody.
say you had one or two bio kids?
I have one bio kid,
Cool,
and I have three stepdaughters. So yeah,
cool.
I
Wow.
and I was lucky enough to observe a lot of birth before I gave birth. Really, yeah, it's a really rare situation, but I got invited to my friend's birth when I was like 22, like right out of college.
Wow.
And, and I was just learning photography actually at the time. And so, I was like, oh, can I come photograph your birth? And she's like, yeah, that's so cool. I showed it,
Wow.
and there were 20 people there. So for all of you out there, if you're thinking about
Wow.
planning your birth, one of the things we do talk about is who do you want there? Who nourishes you? Who helps you? Who supports you? Now, I have never been to a birth since with 20 people. Um, that's not really a thing so much, but what was
Wow.
incredible was that she ate and drank in it. So I didn't know you could do that. She walked around. She got in a bathtub for part of it. She like was sitting, actually, when I showed up, she was sitting on her birth ball and leaning over, and she'd been in labor for like 31 hours at that point when I showed up. And I remember walking in and being like, hey, and I'm like 22, and I think I'm going to go hang out with my friend. And she didn't look at me at all. And I was like, oh, and I just kind of retreated and
Yeah.
realized incredible thing that I was just invited into. Um, but it changed my life to be
Yeah.
able to witness birth in this raw animal. You brought up the animal nature of birth and this I mean, yeah, judging and how we think about ourselves and like something like me too, I guess at a certain point in labor, it's like you just that part of the brain recedes because we truly become these animals. Like,
Mm. I'm so like, so envious that your life revolves around this because I wasn't exposed to a lot of birth
mm,
or early childhood. I babysat like starting when I was like 9. I developed really early. I looked a lot older. I started babysitting when I was like a true child.
Wow.
And so I've always been connected to kids, but I find it kind of addicting. It is so it melts away the system we live in, and it just like connected me to my humanity, and like uh what an optimistic, my kid's 3 now, but what an optimistic first couple years of like, damn, just a reset. So I really get sort of organizing around birth and
Yeah.
helping people give birth.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. But it's interesting because I went to like, I don't know how many hundreds of births before I gave birth, but even with that, and I just want to tell everybody this, right? So I want you to come to, I didn't even tell you guys about Boober yet. We teach childbirth classes. We help people find their birth doulas, their postpartum doulas, lactation consultants. I've been teaching classes in New York City and virtually now for 20 years, not virtually, but and
Wow.
even with the reason to prep, it's so interesting, right? Because, and while you're building your birth plan, I'm going to drop a blog post in the chat in a little bit for you guys to help you think about the things that we're going to talk about a little bit more. But even knowing, having been present at so many births, I did have a very different concept of what it would be like, and there still was
For
this
yourself.
for myself. It was completely different. Like you just can't, it was so much more intense than I ever and
Mm, mm,
and it was much more humbling, of course. And like actually, as somebody who planned an unmedicated birth at home, who had to transfer to the hospital, right? And
right, right,
all,
right.
and I had pain medication and all the things, and now I'm like really grateful that I had these different experiences than what I planned, because I really am like, no, like we don't know. We don't know. I don't know how it's like going to be in your body. Like, I don't know. None of us know until we get there. But the amazing thing about birth in most cases is like, it is a biological function that we don't need to
Mm,
study. So when you're coming to class, you're not like, you don't read a book about how to give birth and then like it works or doesn't, right? But because especially for those of you who are birthing in a hospital environment, um, it's really helpful to be able to navigate, know how to talk to the staff, know how to speak up for yourself, know how to advocate for yourself, or if not, we can't always advocate for ourselves when we're in the throes of labor. In fact, I would argue we can't very much at all, right? But so having, that's why building your care team, and that's part of like the birth plan, is thinking about who is going to be there with you. And so I wanted to talk about doulas a little bit. Obviously, I'm like so biased because I'm a longtime doula, but I believe in doulas in this way that I can't really, I'm always like, I don't care where you get a doula. It doesn't have to be from my company. Like if it feels right for you, and it's not right for everybody, like there's a doula for everybody in every price range, in every personality type, and, race and religion and cultural background, life experience. And when you are in this other state, like we do need that person who's standing by our side, the whole time,
mm,
especially in the hospital environment, which is not necessarily thinking about all the things that we need. That's a system, and it's not, always a system. In fact, it's rarely a system that's truly thinking about us and supporting us, and that's a whole other story.
mm.
But I would love to hear your, like, you you had a doula in the film,
In a movie.
in Babes. It's so good. So tell me a little bit about yeah, I don't know if you had
Oh,
personally a doula or not, but how you thought about like writing for doulas, etc.
okay, so another little amuse bouche I'm gonna give you guys that hopefully makes you want to see the movie instead of being like we saw it now. Um just reading this is so
Oh, thank you.
interesting.
Oh,
Guide
yeah.
doula care free of charge. Oh, so cool. Queen's Rules, which is where this movie takes place. I kind of idealize and covet Queens as a Brooklynite myself. So in the movie we have this like doula interview, montage, and it's funny because like they all look like me because I'm serving doula vibes a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Jada, that's really up to you to decide, but we thought that was funny. And also just like in New York, like that was such a joke on Broad City too. Like I just look like a lot of people in New York. So it's just
You actually, I wasn't gonna say it, but I know a dear old friend of mine who you remind me so much of, like, but me too. It's funny. So,
yeah, yeah. I'm curious, Christina Pierre, were you able to have, if you have a partner, were you able to have a partner? I'm so curious. I gave birth in June
mm,
2021, and I was like, damn, in 2020 when people could golf but couldn't have partners
right? Those five,
birthing in
those five
hospitals.
days, it was,
Um, Wait, also, Jada, I had a question. You just said there's no birthing centers in New York or something earlier. What did you say?
yeah, we barely have a birth center here anymore. It's really insane. There is one in Brooklyn that's a freestanding birth center, but it's not always open. We're really dire right now. We are.
Is that like some Eric Adams stuff? Is that policy? What's going on?
Yeah, this is before actually. This has been going on for quite a long time. And St. Luke's Roosevelt back in the day, which is now Mount Sinai West, so that one might be the hospital people know
Uh-huh.
on the west side. They had they had a birth center. Bellevue Hospital has the most amazing birth center. I ran a
Whoa.
program out of it. Nobody knows. It's closed. It
Current. Oh,
no, it's empty. It's like incredible actually, and it was an amazing place that was staffed by 13 midwives, including one of the only male midwives in the US. And he started this birth center, and it was so incredible. It served, low income birthing people here and was amazing. And they had such an incredibly low C-section rate. Anyway, it's been closed for years. Then
oh
that
my God.
yeah, we have so many, so many issues here, and that's why it's amazing. I'm so glad, Kamal, you brought up, running the Elmhurst program for sure. There's a lot of, and if
Yeah,
anybody
that's
needs, you can
incredible.
always reach out to us, and I can drop some things in the chat later. There are amazing. There's a citywide doula initiative now. We've been working at getting Medicaid to cover doula care for for the past many years, and then many of the incredible reproductive justice activist doulas here in the city for like 15 years, a long time. It finally has come to pass this year.
Mm,
So we'll see what is starting to happen, but we need way more birth centers and
wild.
then yeah, here. So a lot of stuff going
Somebody
on.
said they were the doula for my movie baby. So cool. And also,
Oh,
actually, Christina Pierre, same. I was in triage solo until like, it was proven I was in labor. Same. So scary and like vulnerable, putting that little like belt on your belly. Oh my God. And then also same with the appointments. To have my partner like FaceTime in to see the heartbeat was so sad. It was so sad. Um, so I
yeah.
gave birth at Mount Sinai East.
Okay.
Um, and so in the movie we have this like doula interview and everybody looks like me, LOL. And or most of them, even the guy who's played by Darren Chris. And then we settle on this Eastern European like stone bitch, stone Dragana. And this woman was incredible. This Elena. I forget what her last name was, but gosh, I knew it until like it just fell out of my head. But anyway, this woman
Wow.
Elena, who's a Russian immigrant and did plays and theater in Russia, and then I think this was her first movie in the States. Anyway, so
Really?
that's a funny little dynamic there. And in real life, I did interview several doulas, and like I'm more like um I was I'm glad I was more thorough than I had been before. I mean, I guess it's time. You're giving birth to a human being. And it was interesting. One woman was I remember one woman was younger and a little bit more like projecting onto me in such a way where I was like, telling me what's best and the system is fucked. And I'm like, I know the system, you know what I mean? But like, I can imagine her being perfect for someone else. This is when that sort of, not even motherhood, but parenthood, wow, I can't judge anybody else's anything kind of starts where you're like, I don't
Yes.
know, she's not for me. She was a groovy girl, not for me.
Yeah.
Um, and it just like it's like this new set of parameters around judgment for me anyway. It was like my has continues to be my biggest lesson. But
Oh,
I landed on this woman who was serving Kathleen Turner. Do we have the right age range in the chat for Kathleen Turner? Kathleen Turner, the actress with the
I bet a
incredibly
few.
the iconic, incredible low voice. And this woman was like literally Kathleen Turner. And my grandmother was like a Jewish Kathleen Turner. It was like very comforting. And this woman, what I loved about her was her decisiveness, her age. She was 60s, late 60s. And I was like, I think I'm not going to do any drugs. And here comes my ideas before the reality comes in. And she was like, oh, there's my big kiddo calling me. Hey, baby, still on this call, my love. I can't right now, baby. And she's like, oh, you're going to want an epidural for this. You're going to want an epidural. Let's make it as pleasurable and relaxing as possible. And I was like, you know what? You're totally right. And that's what I'm going to do. And she was right. And, she was honestly accurately sensing my coming to the table with a script I wrote that wasn't what I needed. And she was totally right. And my husband is a truly brilliant individual. Has is a scientist, has a scientific background. He was not able to advocate for me. He didn't know with all that knowledge, and I looked up to him so much with all the knowledge he has. He doesn't know how to talk about, and he couldn't, per Christina and me, couldn't come to the appointments. He had no idea. So he was actually able to focus on me and my what I needed. That he's an expert on, giving me emotional support.
Yeah.
And Deborah Badran was able to tell me this is what it's going to be. I labored at home for 24 hours.
Nice.
Her Deborah, she's like, ask your mom what her birth situation was. I was just like my mother's first birth with my brother. It was like,
Really?
yeah, my mom was 36 hours and 20 minutes. I was like, 37 hours and an active labor of like 15 minutes. Was crazy.
Yeah.
Just like my mother.
Amazing.
And at home, the reason I initially didn't really want to do it because I was like, I kind of want to do my thing with David. I don't want someone
Yeah.
up in my grill. And she was like, I'm not coming over. Just call me when you need at any time tonight. Just call me at any time. And another thing was like my doctor, who's this like type A, she's a fucking doctor. She's type A, like hyper achiever. She's like, well, you said you wanted this certain type of natural birth plan, and I don't want you to come in until you're really ready. And Deborah was like, you're going in. It's time to get some medicine. It's time to relax. You need the epidural so that you can sleep for the pushing. And like what's nice about rather than like hearing what people go through and then ascribing to that as a script, it's more just like being able to visualize one version of it and getting more information for another version of it so you can start to build out a whole spectrum of experiences that could occur. And she just had such good instincts, Deborah, and was like knew where I was lacking and helped me advocate for myself to my own doctor.
It's so cool. I'm so glad you found your person, and it's like
Yes.
that's how I think about doulas. Like if, and for everybody here who's kind of doula curious, I just dropped in the chat in case you are interested. You can always fill out that form and have a chat with some doulas and see if it's right for you. I mean, at this point, what's amazing is, we know that doulas reduce the, intervention rate significantly. We see significantly less cesarean birth with when you have a birth doula. We see birth becoming, we see people's satisfaction increasing significantly with their experience, despite whatever happens, right? It doesn't mean that they necessarily, you might need a C-section, you might need all of the things. But because they help us have agency and can help navigate. And like what you just said, which I think is one of the most shocking things I was told. And after I was told it many times as a doula, I finally like took it in and I was like, oh, I guess that's really true. So many dads and partners, like so many being like, Jada, thank you so much. The craziest thing is how intimate the birth became because you were there, even though I'm like basically a stranger and we'd only met a couple hours, ahead of time. You have a couple meetings. But I kept being told that. And then I finally like really took that in that what I'm providing on some level as a birth doula is I come in and I'm like, I'm calm because I see you, whatever, you're at home on all fours bellowing like a wild lion. It doesn't freak me out. Like, I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, and then when I am calm, then everybody else is like, oh, okay, I guess this is normal, because it doesn't feel normal at all. So, and especially on the outside, and our partners are like what you said, like if you are partnered, right? They're the love, the presence, they know you. They know like your eyes and your hand, or what you need or what you don't need. And like, or maybe they try something and it's not right, but you can say fuck off and it's all fine. Like, hopefully. But the doula is able to, even if you took a birth class, like you can come to our childbirth class, but that's 3 hours or 12 hours or whatever one you take. It doesn't matter. It doesn't all sink in. And your person is going through the most intense thing in their life. And it is normal for your partner to care about you so deeply that it's kind of hard and intense to watch. And how are they supposed to remember every last thing? So yeah, the doula like throws out these suggestions, these ideas, and we're not easily offended either by you brushing your hand off or like telling me to shut up, because because that's part of what it is. So I think that doula is like, we not only reduce the C-section rate, increase success with lactation, decrease postpartum depression, like so many amazing things that happen when you have the continual care of a doula. We're also the only birth professionals who stay with you continuously throughout the entire thing. And I don't think a lot of people realize that their doctor, unless you have a very special person who's like, yes, I will sit with you for 20 hours. Like, they are in there 5 to 10% of the time in most cases. If you have a midwife, they're there a bit more, but still not the whole time. And our doctors and midwives are caring for us clinically. That's their job. So they have another focus. And the doula is like your emotional, informational, like support person who is just there by your side throughout the entire process, helping you get from home to the hospital, which I think is, in most cases is a big deal. So, and now, like even today, June 10th, I think it came out, when the New York standing order for Medicaid to, that doulas, doctors don't have to now write a prescription, because that was one of the tenets of this Medicaid bill coming to pass, that doctors would have to write an individual prescription for a doula. And we've been waiting for the standing order, and they put it out. And now that there's a standing order saying that, doulas actually literally, like I just posted this in our stories on Get Boober, will reduce so much of the racial and class discrimination bias that we see in birth, and really shift the maternal health crisis that we're having here for Black and brown people in our city, where it's significantly higher than in most places in the US. So that's really important to know. So doulas are amazing. That's all I have to say. And I don't know any who didn't have a doula. That's all. There's my doula tome. So
Beautiful.
we have a couple questions that have dropped in, and I want to kind of jump in a little bit of them. So Marga asks, was there anything that you brought with you to the hospital that was crucial, or that you were so glad to have while you were in L&D, or labor and delivery? So I'd love to hear from you if there was anything that you loved having with you at the hospital, and then maybe I'll jump in on it.
That big old S pillow? Like the big old
Like the
body size
Smuggle.
S pillow. It's like, like when you can no longer sleep on your back. I wish I slept on my damn back now, but I never did. But it's like, they're like, the lines in your face, sleep on your back. I'm like I'm in a coffin. Like I sleep on my belly, I sleep on my side. But then we really can't when you're pregnant, because of that nerve that could
The vena cava.
yeah. So I brought that pillow with
Nice.
me to the hospital. And I was so glad I did, because when I did get the epidural, the epidural was the scariest part of the birth for me. That's when I was like crying and shaking and holding David and just like so upset. And even when I had the medicine in me, I felt it in my like leg, and it like sort of dropped to the bottom of my leg. And I was all like, had all these tubes and whatever. And then I would be like, so like freaked out and upset to feel it. So I would want to go to the other side. And it was like a whole production. But then I would feel it there too. But it was like, at least I was like able to keep like evening it out throughout my body. And then holding this pillow, it really helped on the hospital bed with all these tubes and stuff to make it feel like I could still customize my position for my comfort and for the context of
Love that.
the epidural.
I love that. That's such a good tip because the pillows they give you, you guys are like flat pancakes. And at the hospital and actually in the childbirth classes that we teach here, we have those pillows actually so people can like see them in advance because I'm like, really, please bring a pillow. I know it seems crazy. It's like, especially in New York, like, right, you're trying to like lug all this stuff and you're not in a car and you're like carrying your birth ball and you're trying to stuff it in the cab and it's just like utterly insane. But I'm like, you need the pillow. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I
And
just saw Lilia too. I was gonna say a blanket too, just a little soft
you know what?
something to hold.
You can stroke a blanket, like a soft thing is a really amazing pain relief technique. And actually, just because I have my glass of water here, I teach this in my pain. We do a really cool comfort measures pain relief class that's just totally out of the brain and getting into the relief techniques. And like, this is one that I've, this is so weird. You're like, what are you doing? I'm petting my water.
Yeah, that makes sense. My daughter does this, and I'm like looking at you now. I'm like, this is why she does this. And she strokes her little piggy, whatever. It makes sense.
Yeah. So you can have a little warm basin of water. We know that water in labor is actually incredible pain relief. So being able to be in a bathtub that's warm or a shower is awesome, but it's not available to most of us. And if you don't have that, if you put a little warm basin of water and they give these little like things that you can barf into, you could just put warm water in it and then literally put it on your birth bed and you stroke it.
Mm,
And it takes your brain into that like just relaxing space. And if you are a good visualizer, not I shouldn't say good, not like a from it, just some of us don't like to do it, doesn't work for us. Some of us like it can really work for it can really help you imagine that you're in a warm tub, which is very good
mm.
for pain. So I was going to give one other little tip that I have here, which is a comb. I don't know if you use this in labor. Um, but this is a super easy thing and you can just squeeze it really hard and it all these pressure points, it kind of activates all of them, which go up to my brain and kind of compete with the sensation that's coming from my cervix. So anything that kind of shifts the pain pathways or makes them compete. And this is a really easy one, or like a tennis ball that you guys can stick behind your back and in the hospital bed if you're doula or your partner, or sometimes a nurse can be doing some care too, but like sometimes you have to be sitting in a certain position and nobody has access to your back. And so you can press yourself. And that's kind of cool. Um, so we have another question about how did you build a relationship with the baby in the movie? So that's interesting. I think like we could talk about in the movie and or in life because
Mm.
I think it's really it's interesting because some people do feel kind of an immediate bond. They're in that high level of oxytocin, but I also want to acknowledge for some people there is a bit of time it takes to connect with this human who you know but don't know, and it's different for everybody. So yeah, if you want to speak to that at all.
The movie, I was like so glad to be making a comedy because I have made a pregnancy IVF psychological thriller, and that was like so not cool acting with babies in that context, getting my body all jacked up like for that context. Whereas it was so easy this time. I was just like a mommy. I had a 1 year old and I got to be like ooey gooey sweet with these babies. It was so easy and fun and just like, oh, so easy. It was great.
Yeah.
Um, with my baby, again, I just went to dinner for my husband's birthday. So I'm just like reflecting on this because his best friend's wife is so cool and she's a 9 month old. She's older than me, but has her kids younger than me. So it's an interesting dynamic to like tell her stuff that I know or whatever. And m my personal experience was like very, very, I was bonded very immediately. And I can only imagine, speaking of as someone who is very judgmental of myself, very has expectations and wanted this experience of becoming a parent in order to, I knew it would just be like the kind of only way I could get it this physically, this
Mm.
spiritually, this much from the inside out. And I can only imagine, and I can actually I can imagine not feeling that bond, feeling just like empty, feeling a gap. Um, but I didn't have that experience. I bonded early.
Yeah.
What I was just reflecting to this woman, Megan, my friend Megan, when I started struggling was at the toddler phase. My daughter, when she was 2 years and 3 months, about two, like her sleep ch started changing, and I was really having trouble
Mm.
accepting her. Like part of who she is that sleep, and part of now, so now she's almost three and she's very verbal and she knows her feelings and she can say what she needs. But like it was since September till about 2 months ago, I really struggled for those 6 months. And
Mm.
I was on a high. I've struggled with anxiety and depression for a long, long, long time, like kind of truly since I can
Yeah.
remember, but definitely since puberty. And I found that like becoming a parent, like you're supposed to have anxiety. It's really anxiety provoking, and you're thinking about you're keeping your kid alive all the time. And it
Yeah.
is depressing. The
Yeah.
world's so depressing, and
Yeah.
you want to change it. And, I want to change it, and I feel helpless, and my kid inside of it, it's depressing. It kind of all made sense when I became a parent, where I'm like, well, of course I'm anxious and depressed. Like there was something that clicked in for me,
Yeah.
whereas before it didn't, it felt neurotic or something.
Mm.
Um, so when it all clicked in and I felt like finally I'm who I've always felt like I was. I had such a high for those first 2 years. I breastfed for 10 months and like I didn't start like my hair started thinning at like 18 months. Like my hormones were going, 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 going for so long. The drop off for me was more around two.
Yeah.
And I feel like at three, my daughter's three, I'm leveling out. My like feet are planted in the ground and and
Yeah.
I'm not riding some hormonal roller coaster as much anymore. That was my experience so
So
far.
interesting because I also struggle a lot with anxiety and depression and just normal part of life, I guess, for me too. And
Mm-hmm.
the first time I had no anxiety, like when my daughter came out and was on my chest, I was the first time I was like, oh, this is a life with no, it was crazy. I did not expect that.
Yeah,
Everybody,
yeah,
talks about the other, like a lot of people develop anxiety and depression after, and there can
yeah.
be things.
Who
So it's,
hadn't experienced it before, I
yeah.
find.
And for me, yeah, I was like, oh my God, I have a role. I've been working so hard my whole life and
Exactly, a role,
and
exactly.
I'm always doing all the things and like trying, trying, trying. And yeah, I just dropped into this thing and I was like, I never want to work again. I'm working again, guys. But like there was this, I was like, oh, I just want to do this, which is not how everybody feels. So I want to acknowledge that because again, you and I are just telling our personal experience, but it was really interesting to like not have that for a while. But yes,
Yeah. It's
um,
funny to hear you reflect my thing about anxiety, depression, because I've said it a lot. I haven't gotten much feedback on it. But like for it to make sense to you, I'm like, oh damn, like wow. For you to be picking up what I'm putting down, I appreciate because it's very specific.
it is. And I just wanted to drop this link also at Boober. We do have several mental health therapists on the platform who specifically only work with pregnant people and postpartum people. It's a specific, there are therapists who this is their whole specialty. But I do want to acknowledge, one of people who experience postpartum depression and anxiety very often actually are experiencing it prenatally and not realizing it or not somebody's not asking you how you're doing or it hasn't come up
Mm,
or you've experienced it in the past before. So it's interesting as some people who have it, like it doesn't arise at all. And in fact, we feel very much the opposite during that time because the hormones shift for us in a different way. But for a lot of people, it's actually present during pregnancy as well. So I want to just say that postpartum depression and anxiety are it's one of the most common complications of childbirth, actually, but also
mm,
very, very treatable. But you do have, if we tell somebody, like we have, that's why it's like, good, we're just talking here, right? Like, and the more people who talk about the things, like the more you're like, oh, I'm not just sitting here by myself thinking like I am the only person on the planet, who has experienced that. So yeah. Um, Somebody asked, and we're just going to weave through a bunch of things in our last 10 minutes together. What's a top tip for partners during labor? So Julia asked us that question. What do you have any tips for partners? Or what did you tell your partner? You brought him up a bit.
Um, I think having a doula is my tip for a partner so that they can focus on their expertise, which is you. Um,
Yeah.
and also, actually, another thing is bring additional pillows and sleep aids. I don't mean medication, I mean like blankets and pillows for the partner. Like my doula is like 60 something years old, and you know, David, I mean, David's in his 40s, but like still, he can sleep on the floor over Deborah. You know what I mean? He's 44, but that's just one thing, and that is really kind of the only, as I think back, that's kind of the only probably tip I could give, because otherwise, like my husband is really I don't know, really good in a high intensity situation and keeping me calm. So I'm just like, that's the person who knows you best.
Yeah. Another tip I would give for partners, a few different tips I would give is um, partners bring, it sounds silly, but bring snacks and food and maybe caffeine for yourself, right? Because if you go through the birth overnight, but not, and then you're nodding off and your partner really needs you in that moment. It's very hard. It's very strugglesome when you're in that space. And I've often been with people where they're like, oh my God, I drink coffee every day, like in a huge amount, and they don't have anything with them. And they don't want to leave the room.
But
And, so I'm just like, have a caffeinated beverage if you're a caffeine drinker in your bag, in your birth bag for partners, but also lots of snacks and foods for partners so that they can keep up their nourishment and their hydration and all of that so they can be in that best self for you. Another thing I always encourage people to do is have a little labor vows conversation, which really means like talking to your partner ahead of time and being like, if I scream at you ahead of time, like
mm,
don't walk out on me, like like I love you. And there, that's what's going to happen. Right. And having partners also like kind of make that little vow of like, okay, I'm here for you. It's going to be intense. I don't know what it's going to be, but like, yeah, just kind of having that conversation up front about like what might happen and that it's the labor time. It can be really, really helpful as well.
also, Jada, like you're an actual expert. I did this once, so I'm just gonna offer the following as my experience. Something else I did was like prioritize David's sleep. When
Yeah.
I labored at home for 24 hours, 12 hours overnight, I was like, sleep, dog. Like, you're the only one of us who can, and we're like such a unit right now. And that actually continued into a lot of my baby's first year, where I was like, I don't know, I kind of have trouble sharing sometimes, and I just like took on the burden of like overnight stuff. But also because I was like, well, I'll be the insane person during the day tomorrow, and you better be normal and grounded and not insane, because you're the one who got sleep. But it kind of, that worked for me.
So interesting
um
because I think we had a similar I had a 36-hour experience of birth
wow.
and I remember I have to admit I was a little mad when I saw him sleeping. Even though
Oh, totally. I'm also like, let me just be pissed at you. Like,
yeah,
let me be,
even though
like it's,
I I fully knew, right? I'm like, of course he should sleep. And it was the earlier part. Like, of course, like they're rational. So that's cool that you gave that permission. I was like, but he needed to. And it was the right thing to do because it went on forever after.
yes.
Oh,
Also, I'm just seeing some like really interesting and
yeah.
bold, strong messages in the chat
Yes.
about mental health. And I want
Yes.
to like thank you for I'm just reading this. This gives
Yeah.
me comfort, especially because he works also. So I want him at his best. Totally. I really appreciate people sharing. And I want to say, like, oh man, I want to just share more, because I think it's like pretty much what mental health care is sharing and like kind of
Yeah.
understanding that you're not alone, and that again, like the system that we live in, especially in America for women, like our maternal mortality rate and the way that it is stacked up against Black women and against brown women, it is so psychotic and sadistic. We are put in a situation as parents and mothers in this country that is cruel, cruel,
Yeah.
and nonsense. Makes no damn sense other than the fact that our country is born from a totally cruel racist system that we haven't acknowledged, so we're still like in it. So
100%.
first of all, first and foremost, like the shit we're all going through is totally crazy. Don't forget, it's crazy. We're supposed to have years off. We're supposed to have in Europe, they say when you come back after a year, 3 days a week is full time. We're supposed to have a village around us. We're not supposed to be isolated. I live in Brooklyn. I'm at least grateful because I grew up on Long Island, like which felt so much more isolating compared to what it feels now, but it's still isolated. We go up into our little, whatever. So first of all, just like at baseline, the system is crazy. But second of all, just for beyond that, transcendent of context or whatever, like mental health is a struggle and a battle and a journey and like a sort of plane of reality we're living on our whole lives. And when we like sort of touch that current and touch that chord is like our individual our unique paths. And I just want to share that I was on medication for 13 years. There would be no Broad City without antidepressants, truly. From 19 to 32, it took me 4 years to get off. I got off and then I got back on, and I got off and then I got back on, and I got off, and it worked. And also I personally do psychoanalysis, which is 3 times a week. Just for me, like I think as much therapy as you can get at whatever your price range, however you can get it in, this what we're doing here is therapy and community building and support system building. So, any which way that is available to you,
Yeah.
people on this webinar, get it, because it's not selfish. It's for your family, it's for your partner, it's for your whole community. And it is unfortunately completely up to the individuals, as everything else is in this insane country, but it's up to us to create our own support network.
Yeah.
So you're not crazy if you have a voracious appetite for support,
Yeah.
because it's not being provided to you.
You were never supposed to do this alone, like having a baby by yourself or with a partner, whatever, but like not having a whole built-in community is completely abnormal. And even like I always say, I'm like, I hope I'm like, boobers shouldn't exist. There should be no reason why we have to help people find people who help people during the process. Like, and we shouldn't have to pay for it separately when you go to here in Europe. Yeah. Like I just had these Swedish clients or students who came to class and they were telling me like, well, we're here, but we get 3 years of paid time off because there's a value of the parent and the structure and the family and like this recognition that your baby becomes a person in the community later, presumably, right? And so yeah, I mean, for all of us like who think we have to be good at this or do it the best or do it ourselves, or I actually like wrote in my notes of what I was going to ask you and then I didn't, but then because we've been talking about it so much, but I saw this like quote that you put somewhere about that your self-care is therapy and like getting to know
Mm.
yourself better, and that it's part of your work professionally and personally. And I always do, I always tell my husband, I'm like, when I teach childbirth class, I'm actually I wish I could just say, you know what, actually go to therapy. Like that would be the best form of preparation on some level because, or after whatever. It's just like so important. And I guess that's the one only thing I do consistently too. I can't seem to get to exercise or whatever that I've been trying to do, but like,
I'm like, girl, I gotta lift a
yeah,
weight.
yeah,
These bones are starting 37. This is the shift. Gotta lift a weight, but that therapy is, yeah,
yeah.
I need it. Yeah, I really need it. I need a lot
So
of it.
thank you. Okay. So I feel like I want to talk to you for much longer, but we are here at time. I want to just ask you, I want to acknowledge like a lot of people dropped really amazing things. Thank you so much for we may not have gotten to some of your questions, but I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. This has been really amazing to have such a just vulnerable, straight conversation with you. I think you're right. That is so much a part of being able to like do this and do it in front with people. I want to just tell everybody, I want to ask you real quick while I drop a few things. I want to give you guys some codes. We have 40% off of our live online classes code for you guys. And we have a giveaway also. If you are pregnant or postpartum, I'm just going to pick a random name here. And while I do that, I would love, Ilana, for you to tell us if you have anything in the pipeline, like what's coming up for you professionally with like, because there's a lot of fans here. And this will be seen again as well after. So I want to be sure that you know what you're up to and where can we find you next?
Well, don't forget to check out Babes in theaters if possible, but it is on home entertainment really soon.
Oh, good.
Um, it'll give you pleasure.
It
It'll give
does.
you great pleasure. I mean, man, is that like the thing we got to do these days? It is just a really good, heartfelt movie. And my stand-up hour, my latest stand-up special is what the heck is going
Whoa.
above my
Wait, did I
Zoom
do
screen?
that? That was,
No, like the powers that be are trying to make us think we're emojis and like, you do this and something comes up
oh,
on
you
your
did. Can you,
FaceTime or you
okay.
do look at
Wait,
this.
oh,
Like I
wait.
don't need
Oh my
this.
God, they're sending
I don't
us.
need a heart. I know about hearts. Let me
Oh my God.
express. Look at this. Look how weird that is.
Did it
Something's
come?
gonna
It's so weird.
my
Wait.
friend Josh, I was my
Oh,
co-writer for
Josh is
Babes.
here.
I was
Oh,
I
Josh is
was
here, I think. Is that? Oh, no. It just said his name. No, sorry.
no, somebody on their husband's
Hey,
name is on
hey,
her husband's
Josh.
account. Hey Josh, but I was with Josh the other day and he goes like this, and then it starts raining on his side of
Oh
Zoom.
my
We
God.
were like, what's happening? But then also my stand-up special will come out, I think either later this year, December or maybe February, and it's some similar themes, similar themes. Wait, Jada, I have a quick question. Somebody asked, and I'm just curious. Can
Yeah.
you explain the difference between getting the vitamin K shot versus oral vitamin K
Oh,
drops? Do they mean when the baby's out? Because they put the baby,
yeah,
they give
sure.
it to them right away. My
Yes.
baby had that eye drops. What
Yes.
is the difference?
So when the baby's born, these are the newborn care things that happen to the baby, and you get the possibilities are eye ointment, vitamin K shot, weighing, wristband, and actually these are the things like in our lactation newborn care class we talk about. You could consider delaying until after the first feed. It's one of the things like hospital likes to kind of hurry up and do everything, and
Oh,
we're
that's cool.
upset, right? So you can do these on your chest. And the vitamin K shot is actually, it's really interesting. It helps babies clot their own blood. Babies don't have the ability to clot their own blood for 8 days postpartum. So they give this prophylactically so that the baby, if there's any kind of emergency or an injection or a blood draw or a circumcision or what have you, that,
Wow.
that happens. And so isn't that fascinating? That's on day 8. I think that's so interesting too. And yeah, so you can do it orally for the baby, but it depends on what state you're in.
Mm.
Laws are in New York, you have 6 hours to delay and do the vitamin K shot. But there's a couple of things that are state laws, like the eye ointment and the vitamin K shot, and they can actually call social services on you if you deny them, which creates, again, if we talk about our racist system here, what that does and like the risk of having social services called on you, especially if you're a Black or brown person, is, so it's very complicated and very horrible. And yeah,
Thanks
and
for answering that.
yeah, so you can ask, and some people can get a prescription to do vitamin K orally if they don't want to give the injection. But again, always weighing out
Mm.
what certain things we want to refuse or not
So
with
interesting.
circumstances.
Thanks. I was just like, I want to know that too.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so please, I dropped Ilana's website. Ilana, if you want to drop, if there's anything, I will drop the movie link again. It's the film
Yeah.
Babes in theaters, and it's coming soon. To what do we call it? To streaming. um,
Yeah. Home
so-
entertainment for buying or
yeah,
renting.
I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have this is
July
my
2nd.
phraseology.
I don't
Um,
either. Neon's like home end. comment. I'm like, what? And they're like, home entertainment. I'm like, no, totally.
Yes, and please
So
follow at Ilana. We're at Get Boober and Hatch is at Hatch Gal. You'll see me doing teaching tips there. You will learn so much from Ilana and have fun and learn about all of what's important out in the world right now. And thank you for joining. Thank you for just being vulnerable with us here. I really appreciate it.
my
Um,
pleasure. Thanks for creating this space for me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, everybody. And Alana, can I just take one quick photo of us together and
Hell yeah.
snap a thing before we head out? All right. Awesome. I would love to cross paths again at some point.
Me too. Yeah, really a pleasure.
Awesome.
Stay safe out there, everybody. Go easy on yourselves. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.